बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम रेडियो रमदान 87.7 FM प्रोग्राम रिफ्लेक्शंस मैं हूं आपका होस्ट ज़ुबैर अकरम। आज रिफ्लेक्शंस का एक और एपिसोड लिए आपकी खिदमत में हाजिर। रिफ्लेक्शंस प्रोग्राम विद योर होस्ट ज़ुबैर अकरम एंड माय गेस्ट शेख रिजवान मोहम्मद with another episode. This year's series is on Surah Fil and Surah Quraysh. And what we have shared with you so far, what we have presented, is to approach Quran in a way that what is described, seek the backstory, tadabbur. What you see is ask the why. Alam tara kaifa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. So I'm going to put this surah on for the listeners and the viewers, and inshallah we'll go into the commentary of the first one or two ayahs in this session, inshallah.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful.
ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل.
Have you not considered, O Muhammad, how your Lord dealt with the companions of the elephant?
ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل.
Did he not make their plan into misguidance?
وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل.
And he sent against them birds in flocks,
ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل.
striking them with stones of hard clay.
فجعلهم كعصف مأكول.
And he made them like eaten straw.
Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So Surah Fil, yesterday we covered, or shall I say we tried to discuss what Alam Tara means. Have you seen? And seeing means, do you have the faculties to understand?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you, have you started thinking about what you know of the history?
Mm-hmm.
And this is said to Quraysh indirectly.
Mm-hmm.
Correct? Is it?
Indirectly,
And
yes.
indirectly. यानी कहना किसी को सुनाना किसी को. But that's the balaghat, that's the
Rhetoric.
subtlety, rhetoric. This is also the subtlety, the latafat of Quran. This is a subtle way of communication. And it teaches us that this is how we should also conduct ourselves. When we want results, we should know what the results we need, and we don't have to be direct. We should seek this mannerism of Quran in our lives. All these lessons. So knowing the layers of communication of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Quran, and the usloob, the manner, and is this consistent in the entire Quran, or is it specific to this surah?
No, that's Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That's something that's consistent. But the thing about knowing your aim, your objective, and then communicating is related to the two chapters. It's not related to Alam Tara Kaifa, just the verse by itself. There is that rhetorical subtlety which you indicated, which is in Arabic iltifat. And this is a special type of iltifat where the Quran is speaking to the Prophet ﷺ, but knowing that it's an open broadcast as well. So it's, if you think about it, if Allah is speaking to the Prophet ﷺ directly, and it's similar to وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى,
Hmm.
it's consoling the Prophet ﷺ over his distance from having this. It's very interesting. There's a cut or a distance in the revelation. There's a period when the revelation stops to the Prophet ﷺ, for a wisdom that Allah knows, which is to test his resolve and to allow him to, what we were talking about before, to allow him to absorb the revelation before proclaiming it and teaching it. And so that was a very difficult time for the Prophet ﷺ. So when Allah says, وَالضُّحَى وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا سَجَى, by the early morning light and the night when it envelops in complete darkness, مَا وَدَّعَكَ رَبُّكَ وَمَا قَلَى, your God has not forsaken you, nor is he displeased with you. That's a conversation with the Prophet ﷺ, but it's an open broadcast. It's not a direct message which is encrypted and which nobody has access to. We all have access to it, and that's known. And so this chapter, when Allah is speaking to the Prophet ﷺ in a difficult time for him, he's telling him, do not recollect and reflect upon what happened in living history with the companions of the elephant. And that again could be an encrypted message to the Prophet ﷺ just to give him courage, but Allah places it within the Quran. It could have been ilham. It could have been a type of inspiration the Prophet ﷺ was given by God, but it wasn't. It was a verse of Quran that was recited by him, and it was then, almost broadcast, a private conversation almost broadcast, because the private conversation actually has wider significance, has wider significance for everybody in history that will read it, but also immediately it had wider implications for the community that the Prophet went to first, which is the Quraysh and the tribes of the Arabs, but the Quraysh first of all. And so that this rhetorical subtlety comes in, which creates fear in the Quraysh, because even though God saved the Quraysh, the message is not about the specifics of Mecca and it being protected and saved only. It's also about the fact that God can vanquish the strong and protect the weak. So at some point it clicked in their mind that this actually is not just a celebration of the Quraysh, it's actually foreboding for the Quraysh. In other words, in the distance, there's these dark clouds with this chapter. So on one level, Surah Al-Fil is a type of chapter that the Quraysh might have celebrated and said, look, God has chosen Surah Al-Fil. God has chosen Mecca and chosen the people of Mecca, and they could have a lot of fanfare over that. But in the distance, there is this foreboding and fear creeping in that's not the message. The message is a universal message. And Mecca is just one example amongst many examples in history, such as the example of Musa and Fir'aun, Nimrod, all the oppressors that you had in human history up until even this day. That is going to be a universal message. So it could resonate with the people of Gaza as much as it could resonate with the people who initially heard the chapter. But the thing about the communication, we talked about the communication of the Quran, then that is related to, the whole of the two chapters together. This foreboding and fear, which is implicit in the first chapter, and then the reminder of the blessings that the Quraysh directly were given over history and at that specific time as well. If only they came back to Tawheed, to the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this essentially, when you walk into the chapter, it sets the scene for everything that will happen afterwards. So if you go in with the right foot and you enter into a chapter with the right analysis, it makes a complete different reading of it. And that's actually nowadays, in Oxford University, the university itself has a method of teaching, which is a tutorial method. in which they take a text and they do a deep read of it. And the deep because the text has much more meaning than just what we now call speed reading. So a lot of people might have done or heard of courses where they teach you how to speed read. But the thing about speed reading, which is now a fad and everybody wants to do it, and in fact, you don't just want to speed read, you want to simplify every single massive text into an executive summary of 3 bullet points. And I was speaking to actually somebody a couple of days ago who's presenting a cover letter for an application to a job. And the person that was there was somebody else with me, and they actually are very good at this. They said, look, you can't write 2 or 3 pages and write beautiful English prose. You have to get to the point, because the people that are reading it are going to have to read probably 100 cover letters and just get to the point. And there was no rhetoric, no flurry of your beautiful use of English language and the metaphors and your personal journey. Just tell me what on earth I need to know to employ you. I don't have time to read your deep philosophical writings. You understand? But the Quran is not like that. And a lot of really interesting texts. In fact, if we do literary criticism, which is, reading a piece of literature and going deep into the meanings, like Iqbal, you could do with Iqbal because he uses Persian, Arabic, and Sanskrit vocabulary, which he plays on. That is a very similar thing, that the more that you go deep into it, the more you realize how one poet, for example, excels over another poet. And usually in Arabic, Abu Qahir al-Jurjani, he has a book, Asrar al-Balagha, in which he basically, all he does is shows how the Quranic imagery is far superior than any other imagery, because of the way it presents the same idea in a way that's much more subtle, much more distant, which you have to actually dig away to get to the depth of. In other words, the more you dig, the greater the prize. It's like digging for gold, digging for diamonds, digging for something that's precious. Isn't the things that we call currency, like gold, they don't appear on the surface of the earth. If they appeared on the surface of the earth and they were abundant, you wouldn't use it as currency. And so it's the same thing that Imam Ghazali talks about in his Jawahir al-Quran, in his book on the jewels of the Quran. He says the deeper the meaning, the deeper you have to dig. The more special the verse, the more difficult it is to access the exact meaning. And the most, if you think about in the Quran or even in our tradition, the greatest words, the greatest names of Allah are Ism al-A'zam, the greatest name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which the Prophet said, if somebody beseeches God and makes dua through it, their dua is accepted. That Ism al-A'zam, we don't even know what it is, to be honest. Like up until now, the people will, there's 2 broad opinions. One of which is that no one knows and it will be hidden. And the other opinion is that it's known, but then they have like 17 different opinions on what the Ism al-A'zam is. Is it Allah? Is it Dhul Jalali wal Ikram? Is it Al-Hayy al-Qayyum? So there's all these differences, because look how precious it is. Look how impactful it is. And same thing, Laylatul Qadr. I was speaking to my son actually. He was saying what's special about when is Laylatul Qadr? And I said it's the last 10 days. It's in Ramadan. He said, when in Ramadan? I said last 10 days. And he says, which day in the last 10 days? I said, well, we know it's the last odd nights. And he said, what do you mean odd nights? I said 21, 20, 23, 20. And he said, well, which one? And I said, we don't know. And he says, why not? And I had to explain why not. So all these questions. And I said, but then he says, how do we know which one probably is the Laylatul Qadr? And I said, well, a lot of scholars tend towards the fact that it's 27. And he says, and he said, yeah, it must be 27, because by that time you get tired looking for it and it must be there. And it can't be, and it might be the last one, just in case, people are lazy and they might catch on the last odd night. So the point is, he was actually saying, well, why does it tell us? And I said, look, if I told you and we told you, you would neglect the rest of it. So you had to, a simple thing that we explain to people all the time. But he's thinking, what you say all the time. Surely I need to use it. I need to use this chapter for something. or getting a job
Yeah.
application or getting a contract. No, it's there in keeping with how human beings, work, which is even like in Ramadan. If unfortunately, I don't want to use the metaphor of food, but if you're about to break your fast, I'll talk about food because you have a very simple palate. Child has a very simple palate. The mother's
Mm,
milk.
mm,
Mother's milk is as no as non-descriptive as possible for the child because it has no specific strong elements within it, in terms of taste, in terms of
mhm,
color, in terms of smell. But then when the child starts to wean off the mother's milk, it starts to have solids, but the solids are still fairly plain. But then you get to the point level of evolve into Michelin star level cuisine with um, you know um, I don't know, anchovies and capers and
mm,
sweet and sour, and the human mind goes crazy in trying to get the perfect balance between different things. And the more advanced the person, the more advanced their palate. So you have caviar, and you have special types of tea, special types of coffee, and
mm,
people search after the most expensive type of coffee, which is one that's consumed by a specific animal, then excreted out of its backside, and then they clean it, and then they make coffee out of that. I mean, it goes
mm,
crazy. The thing is, we go from simplicity to complexity in
mm,
everything, and the most precious things are the things that the most, so olive oil, for example, single origin from a specific place that's cold pressed at the right time, and then it's bottled in dark glass bottles. It'll be the best from a specific region, instead of just a generic olive oil which is mixed up with different countries, different origins. You don't know where it's from. It might be the worst parts of the extraction process. That's what the Quran essentially starts to do. The more
mm,
you dig
mm,
for the ultimate purpose of a chapter and the message of it, and essentially the lata'if of it, which are things that you only get when your palate is more advanced. So you only get
mm.
that meaning when your palate is advanced to ask those questions. Otherwise, if you read the translation, did you not see how God dealt with the people who had the elephant? Okay, tell me about it.
Mm,
And the next verse tells you, and that's you're within 3 minutes, Allah la khair salah, as they say,
mm, mm,
finished.
mm, mm. हाँ
So
नहीं मैं
ये
समझ
बात
रहा
क्या
हूँ
है?
कुछ हाँ मेरा जो सादा दिमाग है वो इतनी कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज को नहीं समझ पा रहा शायद लेकिन यस
But your Urdu is
इट्स लाइक
so beautiful. I mean, your my somebody was saying your Urdu is really eloquent, and as my mother-in-law, mashallah, Urdu is so beautiful because she used to teach Urdu.
हाँ
So I
हाँ
do think you're Siddha Sada as much as you claim you are. I think you're just mustajil. You're just like you want it quick. You want to move on.
हाँ हाँ नहीं हाँ maybe that or maybe really that this is actually I'm enjoying the beauty of Quran uh, talking to you okay where you have to really go deep dive and it's like a circus right uh,
Mhm,
you are a spectator
mhm,
you're a spectator and just watch it unfold
mhm,
it's a and we are watching our lives unfold and what if we do it through reading of the Quran
mhm,
uh, and then map Quranic teachings with our lives, how we perceive them in different stages of life, and
mhm,
how beautiful it would be that if we do it through the scholars of Quran, through
mhm,
tafsir.
mhm,
Subhanallah. So yes, alam tara kaifa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. I'm personally just going through a few things here during Ramadan, and I'm thinking the best way to look at the situation is alam tara kaifa.
mhm,
Have you seen and just let it happen, let it be, but with a context of
mhm,
what could have happened. Once this phase passes, then you would know what the hikmah, the the wisdom of all these dots that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is asking us to connect in our
Mm.
lives.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. So your constant refrain is, okay, what does it mean for me in 2026 or the listener in 2026?
Mm.
So how do we? So a lot of these is like like if you watch a movie and always good movies are supposed to have a twist at the end,
Mhm.
and the crazier the twist, meaning the more unexpected the ending, the more people speak about it, because the complexity of the movie up until the story, movie is essentially a visual story, isn't it? The
Mm.
more
Mm.
unexpected the twist at the end, which is still plausible, it's not implausible, but
Mm.
it just shows the twist, if it's unexpected but it's complex, and then you start to understand how it's plausible and possible, and that's when you say wow. And then you start, the reason why you say wow is because you might think, okay, so many
Mm.
instances in your own life that mirror that kind of event. I never thought that person would have done that. I never thought it
Yeah.
was him or her. And or I never thought that humans could steep so low, or rise so high from the muck. So again, that is afterwards, at the end you see it.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so the Quran is something sometimes like that. You go through the story of it, and you go through the message, you go through the reflection, and then all of a sudden you recollect it for your own situation.
Mm.
Like this
Mm.
is like that. This is the ability for you as human beings to compare one thing to another, which is why human beings are the pinnacle of creation, because they have the ability to recollect and create anecdotes and analogies and parallel narratives, and then bring them together years later, and to create a whole narrative and story. And that's something that the Quran builds on, because the Quran is words. It's words,
Mm.
it's stories,
Kalam.
it's it's kalam, essentially. It's captured, the divine speech captured in the Arabic language. And so it has to reflect, I mean, it has to have that. If you're saying the Quran is kalam Allah, the words of God, the pre-eternal words of God captured in temporal forms of letters in Arabic, it has to have complexity. It has to have unending, I wouldn't say numerical, miraculous qualities, but it has, I don't know if you know that there was a whole movement in Persia, also in Muslim Spain, called Hurufi movement. Hurufi. Don't know if you've heard of it. Who
Really?
was it? Fadlullah al-Istrabadi, who was actually he went a bit AWOL towards the end of his life, but everything was related to numbers in the Quran. So the kind of wazifa
Oh,
people
acha, acha,
write.
हाँ. ठीक, ठीक, ठीक. Yes,
Hurufi
yes.
movement, yeah.
The adad.
Yeah, so basically saying that there's secrets in the Quran, like in the Bismillah, in the letter Dad, for example. Oh, sorry, letter Dal has special qualities, and 28, the number of letters, is a special number
Mm.
that resonates in even the lunar movement. The each phase of the moon, from its birth to its waning and rebirth, is 28. So that represents the letters, and the letters represent the the planetary systems, and
Mm.
so on and so
Mm.
forth. And so it got to the point where they said there's so many secrets that if you want um, somebody to fall in love with you, then you have to write this thing on this, with this
Mm.
letter, with the Awadud, and then this, and then that, and you drink it at this point in the lunar cycle. All these things that went over the top, because people found so many deep meanings in the Quran that they thought, okay, we can go to 10 with this and use it in every single possible way that we can with it.
Mm.
And even sometimes with no basis in tafsir, in the Arabic language, in revelation, and in what we know transmitted from the early Muslims, the Salaf. So the point is that the depth has to be there for people to come back to it.
Mm. Mm.
So
Mm.
imagine a restaurant that you've been to, and it just does a very nice dish, but that's it. You're not going to go back to it. You're going to go to try the next best thing, next thing, the next thing, the next thing.
Mm.
It's that thing that every time you go back, something else, in the palate. Again, go to the metaphor of the
Mm.
food.
Mm.
There's
Mm.
something else some subtlety in taste that says, oh, that restaurant has brought out that, and next time I go, something else is experienced by me. That's our very menial level of just food. Literature is of that nature. There's some beautiful literature, but the Quran is literature revelation. And that's why, you know, when you say Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka, there's so much in it in which that first verse is actually pointing out not the context we talked about, Alam tara, is actually the core of it is kayfa fa'ala rabbuka, how the method through which your God dealt with the people of the elephant, the method your Lord used. That's the core of that verse, actually. It's not Alam Tara. That's our introduction of who's listening to this question. And the obvious thing is, okay, how did he do it? How did this happen? How did it all unfold? And that will be the point of wonderment, because it won't be that many things happen in history. Many empires rise and fall. Many great warriors and great leaders come and go. But it's not that. It's how. Was there something special about what happened that tells you about a divine hand, you know, a metaphorical divine hand in the story that means that we need to take interest in it. And that's what's interesting about this chapter.
शेख रिजवान के साथ रिफ्लेक्शंस प्रोग्राम में हम सूरा फील और सूरा कुरैश के बारे में कुछ डिस्कशन कर रहे हैं और समझने और सीखने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. तुमने देखा नहीं कि तुम्हारे रब ने हाथी वालों के साथ क्या किया. शेख का इसरार यह है कि ये जो तर्जुमा है, तुम्हारे रब ने हाथी वालों के साथ क्या किया, कुछ ऐसे होना चाहिए कि तुम्हारे रब ने हाथी वालों के साथ किस तरह क्या किया. यानी उसका किस तरह क्या किया, उर्दू ज़ुबान में क्या किया में वो किस तरह जो है वो छिपा हुआ है. लेकिन हम एक छोटे से एड ब्रेक के बाद इंशाल्लाह इस मानी की तरफ आएंगे कि क्या तुमने देखा. और शेख ने, अगर मैं थोड़ी सी समरी करूं उन लोगों के लिए जो कि उर्दू को प्रेफर करें, कि हम सिंप्लिसिटी अगर मांगते हैं कि बस हमें कुछ घोल के पिला दिया जाए और हमें ज़िंदगी के सॉल्यूशंस दे दिए जाएं और कुछ वज़ाइफ दे दिए जाएं, तो ज़िंदगी इससे बहुत ज़्यादा खूबसूरत है. ये जो पुरपेच ज़िंदगी है, इसके पेच को खोलना, इसके मुहम्मे को हल करना, जैसे प्रोफेसर रफ़ीक साहब कहा करते हैं कि मन रब्बु का, ये पहला सवाल होगा. तो ये सारी ज़िंदगी इस सवाल का जवाब तलाश करने में गुजरती है कि तुम्हारा रब है कौन, और उस रब को जानने के लिए कि वो कौन है, उसने हमें अपना ही कलाम दिया. हम ब्रेक के बाद 2 पॉइंट्स पे शेख से गुफ्तगू करेंगे. एक तो ये कि सारी चीज़ कलाम पे बेस्ड है, ज़िंदगी कलाम पे मुनहसर है. खुदा का कलाम, मेरा कलाम, आपका कलाम, एक दूसरे के साथ अल्फाज जो मुंह से निकलते हैं वही ज़िंदगी है. और इसी तरह से फिर उसके बाद हम उस पर गुफ्तगू करेंगे कि खुदा ने जो किया वो कैसे किया, और जैसे किया वो क्यों किया. इश्तिहार का वक्फा, दोबारा आपकी खिदमत में हाजिर होते हैं.
फूल खिलते हैं बड़ बड़ के सल्ले अला, फूल खिलते हैं बड़ बड़ के सल्ले अला, झूम कर कह रही है इबादे सबा, ऐसी खुशबू चमन के गुलों में कहाँ, ऐसी खुशबू चमन के गुलों में कहाँ, जो नबी के पसीने में मौजूद है. हमने आँखों से देखा नहीं है मगर, हमने आँखों से देखा नहीं है मगर, उनकी तस्वीर सीने में मौजूद है, जिसने लाकर कलाम
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम. रेडियो रमदान 87.7 FM से हम इस इश्तिहार के वक्फे के बाद दोबारा आपकी खिदमत में हाजिर हैं. Just before the break, we we were discussing w- how did, or we were about to start, how do we understand that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did to the forces of Abraha is the key. Trying to understand how he did what he did, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Lekin before that, Sheikh said something about this is kalam, and kalam has its depth, it has its complexity. Sheikh, everything is kalam. Yani the entire life is kalam. The way we understand human interaction is through our words.
Mhm.
So we are connecting with God through His word,
Mhm.
and we connect with people through their word. Is what they say is what we paint our picture of how we will interact,
Mm.
and the entire life is trying to understand the word of God and people.
Mhm.
Is that
Well, I
making
mean,
any
it's
sense?
not it's not all, but it's one. It's the thing that distinguishes human beings from other, um, you know, the animal, the rest of the animal kingdom. If you put humans as part of the animal kingdom, as you know, as a definition, haywan natiq, an articulated,
Mhm.
intelligible animal, which we are. The articulation is in speech. Other animals have communication. They have the Quran actually. it 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 preempted science in telling us that, you know, the human ability to communicate is not unique to humans. Animals communicate. The ants in the story of Sulaiman alayhi salatu wasalam, they warned each other of the army of Sulaiman through words, and the bees and everything. إِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ. There's nothing except it sings the praises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know that to the point of we actually, as Muslims, we believe that that resonates within stones, within inanimate objects as well. Like I remember I was at a mosque once a long time ago, like 16, 17 actually. And there's one of the imams, a young imam actually, he was washing something and it broke, and he said its dhikr has stopped. So I don't know what planet he lives on, but or what universe he was existing in, but he saw the cup, and once it broke, he said it's time for dhikr is finished. So everything communicates. But the thing about humans is that we have the ability to communicate through words and through sounds in a complex way, but also we have the ability to record that and to ponder over it, which is different from any other part of creation. We don't, I mean, the jinn would be within that realm. I've not, I mean, I imagine that would be the case, but nothing else. They only have the ability to resonate with what's immediately in front of them. Pleasure, pain, with the angels, it's the dhikr of Allah or carrying out specific tasks that it's almost like they have no ability to do anything apart from that. But with human beings, we have the ability to reflect. And that's why the Quran constantly comes back to that idea of reflection, because reflection allows you to ponder over meaning. So in life, absolutely correct. I mean, sometimes it's more than speech. Sometimes it's just the raising of an eyebrow, which can cause a war between two nations. Just the tone, not what you say, but the tone in which you say it, or the time that you say it, and the delay of the answer, hesitation. All these things are subtleties of speech, which indicate
So kalam
sometimes.
is not just words. It's a language. It's a communication, and how you communicate is not just words.
Yeah, so even like in fiqh, they say like وسكوت البكر قبول, like in kitab al-nikah, which is not applicable anymore. That unmarried young woman who is proposed to in marriage and she's silent is an acceptance. This is not valid anymore because that's a cultural thing. The fact that in certain cultures the silence was considered to be consent. Now, actually, the silence is considered to be an indication of disengagement more than consent. So even silence is a type of communication because it tells, sometimes silence tells you more than words. And so,
Mm,
yeah, human beings have the ability, but they have also this amazing ability to capture and record for progeny, like centuries into the future. We can tell them of what we felt deep down. The moment an
mm,
animal dies, it might have a deep spiritual state, deep spiritual life. It dies, it dies. We're not able to go. The animal kingdom is not able to go back and recollect this great, squirrel that existed
mm,
in the Highlands of Scotland that lived its life, but also, lived it in rapture over God's existence or something. But human beings have the ability to, like Homer's Odyssey and Iliad and all these things. They're able to record our passage through history, and the Quran does that. Like the Old Testament, like the New Testament attempted to do it. But the only thing about the Quran is it claims this ability of preservation of the message exactly as God wanted it, and it's God's speech, which is different. So it is the same. It's in a generic form. It is the ability to communicate, but it's different from the perspective of the fact that the Quran is the word of God, pre-eternal, instantiated within our speech, which is also proven to be preserved exactly how the Prophet recited and came down with it. And that's why it deserves more reflection, because there's something special about the form. There's something special about how the words appear. So if we are reflecting over Alam Tara, it's because that
mm,
was placed there by divine decree. Otherwise, if it was just the meaning and the translation, you could say, well, that translation doesn't say this. If we were sitting if we didn't know Arabic and we were sitting around in a circle reading an Arabic Quran, we couldn't have this conversation as deeply. We would
mm,
think about, okay, if it's a good translation and it said, have you not reflected over the way that your Lord dealt with the threat of the people of the elephant? You could
mm,
actually ponder over that meaning, because the translation is much more expansive. It's much more representative than just saying, did you see what God did to the people of the elephant, which you can't
mm, 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 mm.
ponder over because the translation's really terrible. And so that's it. We are humans who communicate through language, and therefore, why should we not reflect over language, especially the Quran?
Alam tara kaifa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil. So
Mm.
what you're saying is focusing on fa'ala rabbuka. Yeah?
Yeah. كيف فعل ربك. It's actually the key in
Kaifa.
that whole verse is كيف.
Kaifa. Mm,
So the
mm,
people of the
kaifa.
elephant is interesting because, if I was to go through it, the first element I thought I'm not looked at tafsir for this. Actually, we just like
Mm,
you actually
mm,
guide the discussion. When I look
mm,
at this verse, I see alam tara. I see all the rhetorical force of
mm,
the characters. That's what we've discussed up until now. The next thing I see is kaifa. And kaifa
mm,
is actually the pivot for the whole verse. And for me, it's actually the pivot of the whole chapter, because it's the way, the method, the sequencing of this whole down, the downfall of the people of the Quraysh. The people of the elephant are not even the people, it's Abraha.
mm.
Because the people are
Sheikh,
just following.
pause. थोड़ा pause कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे. Sorry, people have this complaint with me and you doing this program. Now, Simon Sinek, this guy who he the golden circle he talks about.
Uh-huh,
He always says, seek the why, not the how.
uh-huh.
Always go for why.
Yes,
So, and his whole mantra is about the entire, he says, management is nothing, leadership is everything. And leadership
yes.
is about seeking why.
Okay,
Why in your own life, why in your organization, why in the
okay.
governments, why. So, what you're saying, so
I know what you're going to do. I know what you're saying. It's perfectly true, actually. I agree with it.
yeah, yeah.
But you're
So, what?
missing something, which I'm going to explain once you finish.
हाँ 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 काश जुबान मुझे अच्छी आती तो मैं
No,
इतना
no,
लंबा
you're
ना
going
करता
doing a good job, actually.
so so the why any piece of wisdom these people, I mean, he's one of the best in this field right now,
Yeah, yeah.
most watched, millions. And I wonder if he has read Surah Fil. And
Why? Why?
he
Why are you saying that? Because he would change his perspective.
no meaning any wisdom is not man-made, any wisdom comes from wahi.
Uh huh.
And even the style comes from Wahi.
Mhm.
And if people haven't read Quran and they've only seen Simon,
Mhm.
and if they've done both, the dots connect.
Yes, but
What he's saying,
Mhm.
what he's saying, and what sells and is responsible for building multi-billion pound companies, training
Mhm.
manuals, is only in this ayah. Alam tara kaifa fa'ala rabbuka kaifa.
Mhm.
Why?
How?
How?
Yeah.
How?
So what I thought you were going to
But
say is
no, but there is a
he
why
is.
of how. There's a why of how.
Why is it? How's it a why of how? Because essentially, what I thought you were going to say is, he's he's in society puts in a pedestal a person who's asking why. If you ask 7 whys, you will get to the ultimate purpose of life. Essentially, why?
Yeah.
What you think I'm saying is the most important thing is how, but that's only in relation to this chapter. So the whole point of the how is because once you answer the how, you'll have to ask the why. Once you know why is God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doing this in this amazing, unconventional way that sticks in the mind of historians and the people of that time, why do all that? Why not just allow the Quraysh to be vanquished? Or why not? Why did the other Arab tribes not just fight with him and this ended up a normal skirmish and the same thing happened? Why is it that? And that's where Kaifa comes in, because it shows divine intervention. It shows the clash of one group of people, which is Abraha essentially, who's plotting something, and God plot is a kind of secretive thing. It'll come up in the next verse, and that plot is going to be demolished by God. So it's the question of how it's done, which then makes us then think, okay, this is important. So why did it happen? So the complexity of it is it's the thing that is bringing you in is this is not going to be a normal vanquishing and defeat of an army. This is going to be a complete humiliation at the level of Nimrod, at the level of Fir'aun, essentially. If you think about it, if you think of the parting of the Nile and then the drowning of Fir'aun, or the death of any other tyrant through a mosquito bite, something insignificant killing somebody so important, this is going to be right up there, because essentially you're saying, if you read the kind of conventional imagery, it's Allah sends birds with stones that are nothing compared to, first of all, birds with stones with intent to kill is something that's Kaifa is going to say, yeah, how did that happen? And then against an elephant army, which is essentially even look at even the first verse, it doesn't say Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi Abraha. How did God deal with Abraha, the great tyrant? It's the people of the elephant, and the elephant was something that once they saw on the battlefield, it was khalas, time, it was gone, because it's not even a horse, it's not even a camel, it's an elephant. So if they're using elephants in warfare, their army must be vicious as well. And so they're thinking, how are we going to stop an elephant? It's going to just, it's an ancient African, North African war elephant, which is extinct, but it would just smash through everything in its way. You wouldn't be able to do anything to it. And so all of that is kaifa, it's how. And what's interesting about this chapter is that God will then not ask you to think about how it happened. He will tell you. The kaifa, because it's so important, Allah will then step by step show what's amazing about the how. And then at the end you will say why, and then you will say li'ilafi Quraysh, for the so I'm not going to go into that thing, because essentially li'ilafi is essentially answering a why question, because in the Arabic that beginning of Surah Quraysh actually is stuck in the air. It's actually, scholars discuss why is it just seems like it's floating, because the reason why it's floating is because you're not connected it to something else, which is why Ubay ibn Ka'ab and Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib and Umar radiallahu anh used to always have the want of reciting both together, because the how then pushes you to the why, which is Surah Quraysh. And so that's essentially the first verse. We don't need to go into the verse too much if you don't want to, because I know you want to move on, because we're not finished half the first verse yet. So we need
Yeah.
to.
No, ألم ترى كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل. So, كيف is the pivot.
Of the whole verse, yeah, Kaifa.
كيف. So,
Because
how
you're
it
having
was
to
done.
ponder how, not why, how. God is asking you to think and reflect and recollect how God dealt with them, not why, not when, not where. All these we know. We know where. We will know why later on. When, where, all these things we know. We know exactly all these places, but we don't know the how. So each verse, each part is going to be focusing it on a different interrogative form, which is what, when, why, how. And here it's how.
A short ad break, and inshallah we'll move on to the next verse after this break.
मौजूद है हमने माना कि जन्नत बहुत है हंसी हमने माना कि जन्नत बहुत है हंसी छोड़ कर हम मदीना न जाए कहीं यूं तो जन्नत में सब है मदीना नहीं यूं तो जन्नत में सब है मदीना नहीं और जन्नत मदीने में मौजूद है हमने आँखों से देखा नहीं है मगर हमने आँखों से देखा या नबी सलाम अलैका या रसूल सलाम अलैका या हबीब सलाम अलैका सलवातुल्लाह अलैका या नबी सलाम अलैका या रसूल सलाम अलैका या हबीब सलाम अलैका सलवातुल्लाह अलैका रहमतों के ताज वाले दो जहां के राज वाले अर्श की मेराज वाले आसियों की लाज वाले या नबी
Ya Nabi, salam alaikum. Allahu Akbar. Welcome back. Sheikh, I think just not this.
I'm
Just
worried
break.
where you're going to go now. I'm worried. I was worried where you go. We need to get on with these verses, chapters.
Final minutes left, about 15 minutes. And I'm seeking some connection with this ayah, this ayah's connection with the Durood. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Maulana Muhammad. So the exalted, the revered status of Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and this ayah has a connection to this. This ayah has a connection to Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Maulana Muhammad. How is Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam honored by giving just this verse? Alam tara kaifa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. Just this word has a connection of honor to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Are you asking a question? Or you're stating it?
I have a feeling, and I want to confirm it with you.
Okay. You have a feeling, and you brought me here to confirm your feelings.
Yeah, confirm. Is my feeling of reflection of this ayah a correct feeling?
I mean, there is. I mean, we not talk about the fact that this is the one of the main themes of this to the Prophet ﷺ is solace and tasalli and granting contentment in a state of when the Prophet ﷺ is slightly fearful of the consequences of pronouncing and projecting the message. So there's that aspect of tasalli and consoling and solace. And the other thing about this is that Allah SWT is promising the Prophet ﷺ that God will protect him from people. We also have the fact that the Prophet ﷺ is honored by the fact that the qasam of Makkah in Surah Al-Balad, La uqsimu bihad al-balad wa anta hillun bihad al-balad, is, according to Imam Qurtubi, related to his presence in the city itself. So it's almost as if the preservation in the Al-Fil, the preservation of the city was so that what happens 50 days after the crushing of Abraha in the proximity of the Haram, and in fact it's between Muzdalifah and Mina, 50 days or so, we're told, after that, you have the birth of the Prophet ﷺ, and Abdul Muttalib, his grandfather, takes him and places him and raises him up and makes a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that could only happen if it remained as it was under the control of the Arab tribes, specifically the Quraysh, and Abdul Muttalib was able to walk freely there. Otherwise, we would imagine to be in a state of slavery, because they would have enslaved everybody at the war. And so that's all. It's almost as if this is so that the Prophet ﷺ could be born and then could be almost incubated for reflection in the proximity of the Kaaba itself, and to reflect upon it and go into Ghari Hira and then go into a state of seclusion and then be given Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. From that perspective, there's a very clear directionality, purpose in the events. Because for the Prophet ﷺ, if you think about his experience, if Allah is saying, Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka, did you not see how your Lord, O Muhammad, dealt with the companions of the elephant? For him, it's okay, how did he do it? And why did he do it? Then obviously comes up as well. And the why was obviously, God did it because of you, so that your message would have a place, and the way the history unfolds would be such that you would have the ears and eyes and concentrated attention of the Quraysh, so that when you gave the message, they would be there to come with their counterclaims, and you would be able to defeat them in your history, in your life, in your seerah, as we saw when the conquest of Mecca al-Mukarramah. So from that perspective, you come, your point is, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, that durood, that prayer comes from a divine command. Inna Allah wa malaikatuhu yusalluna ala nabi. God and the angels pray upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in different ways. So from Allah is peace. And this is one of the interpretations, peace. So sends peace upon the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. That peace, because God is outside time, outside space, that peace resonated prior to the Prophet's birth. So that sending of peace was essentially one element of it. The way that God proved it and manifested it was through the event of the Al-Fil, which is the decimation of Abraha, to give the Prophet peace within which he'd be able to come and deliver the message. So there's that aspect of the prayer in the Prophet ﷺ, which is that God sends prayer in the Prophet ﷺ. And that, because it's timeless, it's actually also related to the fact that the Prophet ﷺ was passed through progeny, through parents who were never in a state of shirk. And the Prophet himself said, I was born out of parents who never conceived out of wedlock as well. In other words, never legitimate. That's safety. In other words, nobody could point to the Prophet ﷺ and say, well, your parents, your grandparents, all this was a protected lineage. And again, that's safety in terms of blame, safety in terms of attack. Nobody could point to the Prophet ﷺ and say, well, this is why you're like this. Nobody, because they said themselves, used to say, Al-Amin has come, we need the Kaaba and the black stone placed. Who's going to do it? It's going to be Al-Amin. So they hadn't, the protection was there because they hadn't they'd never had the opportunity to point the finger in the direction of the Prophet ﷺ in any way, lineage, in terms of his tribal allegiances, his motivation, all of that was protected. And so, when we do say the prayer in the Prophet ﷺ is resonating with something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the angels in pre-eternity created. And the other thing about the prayer in the Prophet ﷺ, which Ahmed Zarruq mentions, is that, it actually is a very deep thing, which is, he said that Nuraniyatul Adhkar Muhriqatun li Awsaf al-Abd, that the dhikr has the ability of coarsely and powerfully decimating and destroying the qualities of the human being, the bad qualities of a human being. It's like a painful process when you do dhikr and it affects you. It's also rectifying and cleaning you. And the cleansing is something that creates heat. It creates discomfort, because you have to change from what you're used to. When you're going through training, you have to go through pain barriers. The dhikr is very similar. And so he says, فَمِن ثَمَّ أُمِرَ بِالصَّلَاةِ عَلَى النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم. And it's because of that you've been ordered to do prayer in the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, because with the pain and that difficulty, you need the prayer in the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. He said, لِأَنَّهَا كَالْمَاء. He said, it's like water. The prayer in the Prophet is like water. It quenches the soul, it quenches the thirst of the spirit, and it replenishes. And so from that perspective, the prayer in the Prophet ﷺ is, has many, many benefits. The kind of reason for that is that it has, the coupling of the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the gratitude due to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which is why the Prophet said, "Man salla alayya wahida sallallahu alayhi ashra." If anybody prays in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, God prays upon them 10 times. Wa rafa'a ashara, and raises their rank in 10. Wa hatta anhu ashara, and also removes 10 wrong actions from them. So that's all blessing. It's like Surah Quraysh is Surah Fil is an indication of the blessings of God upon the Quraysh and also upon the Prophet ﷺ by saving the city. And so, it's an amazing, it ties in that, I think, a very direct spiritual way.
ألم ترى كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل. That's all the time we have for reflections of this episode. Inshallah, we'll be back tomorrow with another one, continuing with the first and going into the second ayah of Surah Fil, Alam Tara Kaifa. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Ya Rasool Salam Alayka, Ae Shahenshah-e Zamana, Aapka ye aastana, रहमतों का है खजाना, हो निगाहे मेहरबाना, या नबी सलाम अलैका, या रसूल सलाम अलैका, या हबीब सलाम अलैका, सलवातुल्लाह अलैका, वास्ता ले अबा का, सदका हजरत फातिमा का, और शहीद करबला का, गम ना हो रोजे जज़ा का, या नबी सलाम अलैका, या रसूल सलाम अलैका, बख्श दो जो चीज चाहो, क्योंकि महबूबे खुदा हो, मुस्तफा हो, मुज्तबा हो, जो कहूँ उससे सिवा हो, या नबी सलाम अलैका, या रसूल सलाम अलैका. سلام علیکہ صلوات اللہ علیکہ یا نبی سلام علیکہ یا رسول سلام علیکہ یا حبیب سلام علیکہ صلوات اللہ علیکہ یا نبی سلام علیکہ یا رسول سلام علیکہ یا حبیب سلام علیکہ صلوات اللہ علیکہ یا نبی سلام علیکہ یا رسول سلام علیکہ یا حبیب سلام علیکہ صلوات اللہ علیکہ رحمتوں کے تاج والے دو جہاں